I always thought that I had it all together. Love, career, future, everything seemed to fall into place when I met Olivia. We were together for 3 years, living in the same apartment, making plans, dreaming about the future. It was like fate. I had never met someone like her, smart, kind, full of life. From the moment we moved in together, everything was so natural, as if we were already a family. Paris was supposed to be our next step. I had been planning the perfect proposal for months. The ring was hidden in my suitcase, a beautiful diamond that I had carefully chosen, imagining it on her finger every night. We had talked about marriage before, casually, over wine late at night and whispering in bed. She never hesitated, never gave me a reason to doubt that she wanted it as much as I did. The night before the flight, she was unusually quiet. I assumed she was just tired from work. Olivia had been working a lot lately, always staying late at the office, sometimes even coming home when I was falling asleep. I didn't like the fact that she was overworking herself, but I assured myself that it was only temporary. At the airport, she seemed nervous and distracted. She barely touched her coffee, constantly checking her phone. I brushed her off, thinking she was just nervous about the flight. But when our group was called to board, she didn't move. She turned to me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite put my finger on, pity, maybe even fear. Then she whispered, "I don't want to." I blinked, not sure if I understood her correctly. "What do you mean? You can't leave?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked down, avoiding my gaze. I can't do it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The gate agent made the final boarding call. People walked past us, handed over their tickets, and disappeared onto the jet bridge. I stood there with my suitcase in my hand, feeling like the ground had left my feet. "Olivia, talk to me. What's going on?" She finally looked up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I have to tell you something," she said, looking around as if afraid someone might overhear. "Not here. Let's go home." I should have been furious. I should have demanded answers right there in the middle of the terminal. But all I felt was a cold, sinking fear in my stomach. I silently followed her out of the airport and caught a taxi to our apartment. The ride was painfully quiet. I kept stealing glances at her, looking for some clue, some explanation. Was she sick? Was something wrong with her family? I went through all the versions except the truth. When she returned home, she stood by the window, wrapping her arms around herself, as if trying to hold herself together. Then, finally, she turned to me and said the words that ruined everything. "I'm seeing someone else." At first, I just looked at her, waiting for her to take it back, to say that it was some kind of a terrible joke. But she didn't. She just stood there, still wrapping her arms around herself, a mixture of guilt and fear on her face. "What?" My voice came out hoarse, barely audible. She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean for this to happen." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me. "You didn't want it to happen?" I repeated, clenching my hands into fists at my sides. "Is that all you have to say?" She flinched, but didn't look away. "It started a few months ago. At work. Of course. Late nights, extra hours." I was so damn gullible, I was sure she was just busy. I felt like a complete idiot. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. She hesitated and then said, "Ethan. He's a project manager on my team." The name meant nothing to me, but suddenly he was the most important person in the world, the person who had been with my girlfriend while I was planning our future together. I shook my head, stepping back as if I needed distance to breathe. "And now what? You tell me this, and I'm just supposed to accept it." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "I didn't want to lie to you anymore. I should have told you earlier." I scoffed. "Yeah, maybe before we were supposed to fly to Paris together?" She shuddered, guilt flashing across her face. "I didn't know how to tell you." I took a sharp breath, anger boiling in my chest. "You just did." Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. I paced the floor, trying to process what she had just said. Every moment of the past few months ran through my mind. Every late night, every unanswered text, every excuse. Now it all made sense. "So what?" I asked, my voice coming out sharper than I had intended. "Do you love him? Are you leaving me for him?" She hesitated, and that hesitation hit me harder than if she had just said yes. "I don't know," she admitted, and something inside me cracked. I laughed stupidly. "You don't know?" I repeated, shaking my head. "You're throwing this at me, destroying everything we had, and you don't even know if it was worth it?" She wiped her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you do it?" I shot back. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She couldn't say anything that would make things right. I can see it in her face. She had already made her choice long before she told me. The trip to Paris, the life I had planned with her, no longer mattered. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to remain calm. So what happens now? She looked at me with eyes full of pity. I think I have to go. I nodded, realizing the finality of it. Yes, you should. That evening she packed her suitcase, leaving behind the life we had built together. I didn't try to stop her. I couldn't. And that's how it ended. The first few weeks after she left were a blur. The apartment seemed too big, too empty. Her things were gone, but her presence was felt in the smallest details, the faint scent of her perfume in the closet, the coffee cup she always used still in the sink, the empty space on the couch where she used to curl up next to me. I tried to keep busy, threw myself into my work, went to the gym more often, even met up with friends who had faded into the background while I was immersed in my relationship. But no matter what I did, questions haunted me. Was I blind? Did she ever truly love me? And worst of all, was I not enough? My friends tried to help in their own way. Some said I should leave, that she didn't deserve me. Others said I should try to move on, meet someone new. But I wasn't ready. I didn't want anyone else. Then, one night, a friend sent me a message. Dude, Olivia is getting married. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. She's getting married? I read it again, thinking it was some kind of mistake. But the next message came with a screenshot, an engagement announcement. Olivia and Ethan. Smiling, happy, with a ring on her left hand, but not the one I had hidden in my suitcase for Paris. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. She hesitated when I asked her if she loved him. She told me she wasn't sure. And now, not long after she broke my heart, she was ready to commit to him forever? I should have looked away. I should have deleted the message and moved on. But I couldn't. I needed to know more. I found myself scrolling through the post about her engagement, my chest tightening with each comment, each congratulation. Friends, family, co-workers all celebrating the same woman who had broken me to pieces without a second thought. And the worst part? She looked happy, truly happy. I stared into her smile, looking for something, regret, hesitation, anything that would tell me it wasn't real. But it was real. I thought about reaching out, demanding an explanation, but what good would it do? She had already made her choice. She was moving on. The real question was, why can't I? I threw the phone on the couch and rubbed my temples. Maybe I had been fooling myself all along. Maybe she had been in love with him long before she admitted it to me. Maybe she already knew deep down that I wasn't the one for her. That night I hardly slept at all. Memories of us played in my head like a movie I couldn't turn off. The laughter, the quiet mornings, the future I had imagined, all of it was burned away by the reality that she had never been mine. In the morning, I made a decision. I had spent too much time mourning someone who clearly wasn't mourning me. If she could forget so quickly, then maybe I should stop waiting for answers I would never get. I picked up my phone, took a deep breath, and sent a message to the friend who had told me about the engagement. Let's go out tonight. I need a change of scenery. That night I met up with friends at a bar in the city center. It was one of those places I loved before Olivia and I got serious. Dim lights, good music, just enough noise to drown out my thoughts. Glad you finally decided to come out, Jake said, patting me on the back as I sat down. You've been off the grid. I shrugged. I needed time. He set the beer in front of me. Well, time is up. She's moved on. You have to too. Easier said than done. I took a sip and looked around the bar. People were laughing, drinking, living their lives as if nothing had changed. Maybe nothing had changed except for me. You need to get over it, said another friend, Mark. Seriously, it's the best way to get over it. I wasn't sure I agreed, but before I could object, a woman at the other end of the bar caught my attention. She was smiling, talking to her friend, completely oblivious to me. And for the first time in weeks, I felt curious. Go talk to her, Jake nudged me. I hesitated, and then finished the rest of my beer. Maybe that was what I needed to prove to myself, that Olivia wasn't the only woman in the world. That what we had wasn't the end of everything. I stood up, straightening my jacket. Okay, why not? As I walked, I realized something. Maybe Olivia had moved on too quickly, but that didn't mean I had to be stuck in the past. Maybe, just maybe, it was time for me to start over. I walked up to the woman behind the bar, my heart pounding like it hadn't in a very long time. It wasn't exactly nerves, but it felt like stepping into unfamiliar territory after being stuck in one place for a long time. She looked up as I approached her, her brown eyes meeting mine curiously. Hi, I said, offering a small smile. Hi, she replied, tilting her head slightly. Do we know each other? I chuckled. No, but I've decided to change that. She smiled, and just like that, the conversation flowed easily. Her name was Natalie, and she was funny, confident, and refreshingly direct. We talked about everything from bad first dates to travel dreams. When I mentioned Paris, I felt something tighten in my chest for a moment, but then it went away. And what's your story? She asked, sipping her drink. I hesitated. Had I told her the truth? That I was planning to propose to the girl who had left me for another man? That I was still trying to pull myself together? Instead, I simply said, I'm starting a new chapter. She raised her glass. Then here's to new beginnings. We clinked glasses, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a little lighter. Perhaps I hadn't completely broken up with Olivia yet. Maybe I still had scars. But sitting there with someone new, laughing, talking, existing in the moment, I realized that moving on was not just possible. It had already begun. Over the next few weeks, something strange happened. I felt like myself again. It wasn't just because of Natalie, although we had a few dates and she was great. It was something deeper, something I didn't expect. I had spent so much time feeling like Olivia's betrayal had defined me, that the fact that she was moving on so quickly meant I was stuck. But the more time passed, the more I saw the truth. She wasn't moving on too quickly. She had most likely moved out long before she told me. I was just too blind to see it. One evening, as I was scrolling through my phone, I saw Olivia's name pop up on the screen. My stomach clenched for half a second before I reminded myself that she was no longer my problem. The message was short. Hi, can we talk? I stared at it, debating whether to answer. What could she tell me now? Did she feel guilty? Did she doubt her choice? I blocked the phone without answering. Perhaps in the past, I would have jumped at the chance to listen to her to calm myself down. But now, I didn't need it. I was no longer that person who stood at the airport, heartbroken and confused. I wasn't waiting for answers or apologies. I was finally moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, I was free. Days passed, and Olivia's message remained unanswered. I thought about it from time to time, but not with the same pain as before. Whatever she wanted to say, it didn't matter anymore. Some things are better left unsaid. Instead of living, I focused on myself. I returned to old hobbies that I had abandoned, reconnected with friends I had neglected, and allowed myself to enjoy life again. I continued to meet Natalie, although I tried not to rush into anything. She didn't distract me. She was someone I genuinely liked. But this time, I didn't define my happiness through a relationship. One evening, sitting on the balcony and watching the city lights flicker, I thought about Paris, about the rain, about the future I was planning. It was as if it was in another life, as if I was a different person then. Or maybe I was. I no longer felt bitter when I thought about Olivia. There was no more anger, no more need for explanations. She had made her choice. I made mine. And in the end, I was better than her. I smiled to myself, taking a deep breath of the cool night air. It wasn't the life I had planned, but maybe it was the one I was meant to have. And for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to what would happen next.